Alright, so in today's tutorial, I'll be demonstrating my complete workflow on how to capture and process raw HDR images from the GoPro Fusion. So to get started, you'll first need to purchase and download this app, which is called HDR for Hero cameras, and it's available both on iOS and Android, and it only costs about $2. So make sure that you download this app, and I have it linked in description as well. So after downloading the app, if your Fusion isn't paired to your mobile device, go ahead and pair it through Wi-Fi settings or using the GoPro app so that your Fusion is ready to accept inputs from the HDR app. So I'll turn on my Fusion, go to settings and turn on connect, and I'll enable Wi-Fi in my mobile device. And make sure it is connected to Fusion. Now after this, it is very important that you make sure that your Fusion is in photo mode, because unlike GoPro app where we can switch modes through the app itself, the HDR app is meant only for capturing photos, and we cannot switch modes from, let's say, video, photo and time lapse. So you'll have to make sure that your Fusion is in photo mode, and also make sure that you set the photo settings prior. So my settings are such that I have my Pro Tune enabled, my ISO is at 100, and I have RAW enabled, and I would highly recommend that you enable RAW to get the maximum results from this workflow. And now open up GoPro HDR. So this is how the app looks like. So once you're in GoPro HDR app, you'll see at the top we have number pictures. So you can select anywhere from 2 to 12, but since the Fusion can capture from +2 to -2 exposure values, you can select 3, 5, 7 or 9 pictures. So I've been using 9 pictures to get the most detail possible, and this is totally up to you. So you can select 3, 5, 7 or 9 like I said. After that we have time between images, and this is nothing but the interval that you'd like to set between every image. Ideally you would want to keep this as low as possible, but since it depends on the shutter speed of the higher exposure values, you might get a few errors. So from my experience I've found out that you would want to set this at least 5000 or above, and so I've set it at 7000, so that way there's enough time for Fusion to capture and save the raw file and then capture the next one. And after that I've set all the parameters for 9 pictures. So all the pictures have an ISO value of 100. You can adjust it from over here, and the only thing that differs are the exposure values. So the first picture will be captured at +2, followed by 1.5, then 1, 0.5. The fifth picture will be at 0, and followed by 6, 7, 8, 9, which are -0.5, -1, -1.5 and -2. So once you have all this set up, you simply click on start. So once all the images are captured, you will get this pop-up which says success, images have been captured. Now let's say if I were to decrease the time interval, let's say to 2000, which is by default, and if I click on start, you'll get an error which says if the GoPro camera hangs, then increase the time between images values to at least 2000 milliseconds, and message connection error or camera busy. So this is something that you'll have to try it out yourself, because every environment will be different and the shutter speed will differ accordingly, and so depending on that you'll have to set the interval. So ideally you'd want to keep this as low as possible to avoid ghosting if there are objects moving around. And like I said, that it is very important that you have your fusion in photo mode, because let's say if I were to select this in video mode like I have over here, and if I were to click on start, it's going to trigger video, and I'll keep on recording as long as you don't press the shutter button, because we don't have any option to control the fusion from here. So now you can capture bracketed images on your GoPro Fusion, and of course you'll need a monopod or a tripod for that. So I've captured a few example shots and I'll be showing how the workflow is. So let's move on to the editing part. Alright, so once you have all the files downloaded to your computer, you can either start with the front or the back folder. So in this case I'll just select the front files, and you'll need to open up Lightroom, and you'll have to import all the raw files that you captured for every scene. So since I captured 9 pictures every scene, I'll select only the raw files of one particular scene and I'll drag them to Lightroom. And I'll click on import. And once all the files are imported, simply select all and make sure that the first file is highlighted, or you can select the last file as well, but just make sure that either the first or the last file is highlighted, because the HDR image that will be generated will be labeled after the highlighted image from here. So since I have the first image highlighted, I'll click on photo, and here you can either go to edit and select merge to HDR in Photoshop, or you can select photo merge and click on HDR, and the shortcut for that is Ctrl H. So I'll click on this, and then this window will pop up. So in case if this window does not pop up, make sure that you install Adobe Camera Raw. And so this is the preview of the shot, and here we have few options with us. The first one is auto align. Now I would recommend that you disable this option, because if I enable this now, it will build a preview and there's going to be a very slight movement in the picture. So as you must have noticed that after the preview was built, the image moved slightly, and that's because of this auto align feature. Now the reason I would recommend that you disable auto align is in order to stitch the HDR image that we will export from Lightroom, we will be using the metadata from an original JPEG file, which will have the same name as the exported HDR file. And since there is movement in the HDR file compared to the original file, the software won't be able to stitch the picture. And as a matter of fact, Fusion Studio will crash as soon as you try to import these files. And the next option is auto tone. I keep this enabled because this will give you the best blend right away to start editing in the next steps. And you have option to select the amount of ghosting. So because there was no movement in the pictures I've captured, I've selected deghost amount to none, but this is something you can try it yourself. I simply select it at none and click on merge. So here you will see that we have an HDR image which is labeled as the file name from the highlighted image followed by HDR, and the format is DNG. And now you can edit this image. I usually add some noise reduction of about 25, and I always make sure that I enable remove chromatic aberration. And before exporting, copy all the settings and And if you use the brush tool, make sure that you disable this option because you don't want the brush tool to be copied in other files. And click on copy. And now you can simply export this image. So you can press Command Shift E or Control Shift E. So I'll export this image, and before exporting, make sure that you name the file in such a way that it has _GPR at the end. So for example, this is the file number followed by HDR because we have blended all the images, but at the end we have _GPR.jpg. So it is important that you have this _GPR because Fusion Studio will read these files based on the naming. So just click on done and click on export. So once the file is exported, you can delete these files. So as you can see that we have two files in the front directory. One is in .jpg format while the other is a RAW file. This is the file that we just edited and exported. Here you will have to rename the file again such that you will have to erase HDR from here. So now this particular file is labeled in such a way that Fusion Studio can read this picture and apply stitching by using the metadata of this particular picture. So if you've ever worked with the RAW files from the Fusion Studio, you'll know what I mean. And so similarly we'll work with the back files as well. So I'll select all the 9 images and drag them to Lightroom. And I'll click on import. Once imported, I'll select all and make sure that the first file is highlighted and click Ctrl H. And like I said previously, I have the auto align feature disabled. I enable the auto tone because I find it that it gives the best blend, and deghost amount is set to none, and I simply click on merge. So here we have the merged file, and now you can develop this further. So since I had copied the settings from the front file of this particular image, I can simply paste those settings, and if you want you can further edit this as well. So I'm trying to bring back the details out of the window. So as you can see, we can see the clouds, the trees and the structures around it. So once you're satisfied with the edit, you can go ahead and export this image as well. Again, make sure that the file naming is such that you have _GPR. You can also name this manually after exporting, but it's easier to export it right away with the correct file naming, except that we just have to remove the HDR from the file name. So as you can see, we have two files over here. One is a RAW file whereas the other is HDR_GPR. So I'll simply remove the HDR from this and I'll clear all the images from here. Now after this, you can launch your Fusion Studio. Click on Add Media and select the folder which have the edited files. So we have our HDR image over here and it has this GPR label at the end. So this is the HDR image that we exported from Lightroom, and you can either reframe this or simply export it as a 360 image. I usually export these as 360 images. So you can simply add this to render queue and select JPEG or TIFF and hit render. So as you can see that we have a stitched HDR image, and you can definitely see all the details out of the window, which you wouldn't get normally in a single shot. So you can definitely use this technique for your virtual tours if you have the GoPro Fusion. And I'll open this image in GoPro V Up layer. So as you can see that I can preview the 360 file, and here's how it looks. So similarly, I'll edit a few more images and you can take a look. So similarly, we'll edit a few more files, and I have quite a few shots with me. So alright, so let's edit this particular scene, and I'll select all the raw files and import them to Lightroom. So once I've imported all the images, this time I'll select all and highlight the last image. So I'll select the last image first and then select all, and then click Ctrl H. You can also edit this in Photoshop by selecting merge to HDR in Photoshop, but I find it easier doing it this way. So like I said, I have the auto align disabled and auto tone is enabled, deghost amount is set to none, and I click on merge, and here is our HDR image. So let's edit this as well. So here's a before and after, and so I'll copy all the settings except for local adjustment, which has your brush, graduated filters and radial filters. So except that, I'll select everything and click on copy, and I can export this image, making sure that the file naming is with _GPR, and click on export. And here we have it. Let's rename that by removing the HDR, and also let's clear all these images, and now we'll import all the back files and import them to Lightroom. Select the last one and then select all and click Ctrl H, and I'll click on merge, and then edit the HDR file. So since I'd copied the settings from the opposite image of this particular file, I'll paste the same settings over here. Maybe I'll increase the exposure a bit and use the brush tool to bring out the details out of the window. So here's a before and after of this image. So I'll export this as well, and so here we have the exported HDR file. I'll remove the HDR from here and clear all the files from Lightroom. Go back to Fusion Studio. So here's the HDR file, and it was a bit tricky to find this, but here it is. So let's just export this and play this back in GoPro V Up layer, And as you can see, and just for reference, this is the shot which has the exposure value of 0, and so this is basically a standard shot that you would capture normally. And as you can see that there is hardly any detail in the highlights outside the window, and the shadows are also kind of blown up. So I would definitely encourage you to try this workflow, and I'm pretty sure that you'll be very satisfied with the final result. So thanks a lot for watching, and please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and also please comment below if you have any suggestions or questions. I'll be very happy to answer them. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.